Senate will come back to order. Senator from the 27th. We're waiting on Senator from the 27th. Senator from the 27th.
Mr. President, I move that...
Before you do that, Senator,
Sir.
did you realize that today was our Sergeant at Arms' birthday today?
Is it Robert?
Robert over there. Stand up there, Robert. Happy birthday, Robert. I hope it's a wonderful day. 79, huh? 79. All right. I'll take it. Happy birthday. Recognize Senator from the 27th.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute to Senate Resolution 7.
Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Resolution 7 by Senator Dolezal, the 27th, a resolution dedicating certain portions of the state highway system and for other purposes. Mr. President, the House offers the following substitute to Senate Resolution 7, a resolution dedicating certain portions of the state highway system and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize the Senator from 27th. Speak to the measure.
Bill that we passed early on this session that is actually a continuation from last session. So as you recall, we did some provisional road namings in a lot of your districts, and this is the House put some language in just to identify what districts these were in, but we passed this within the first 2 weeks of session, and we are favorable to the changes they made. Didn't change any road namings, just clarify what districts these are in. Mr. President, happy to answer any questions. If there are none, I will yield the will.
All right, Senator, any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The senator has moved that the Senate agree to House substitute on SR 7. Is there objection? All those in favor of the motion will vote yea, opposed nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. Senator from the 6th is on deck. On the motion to agree, the yeas are 50 and the nays are 0, and this motion has prevailed. Senator from the 33rd, you just moved up.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute for Senate Bill 147.
Secretary, yeah, we could just do unlock the machine and go and get through with these things. Yeah. All right, Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 147 by Senator Rhett of the 33rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 3, Chapter 5 of Title 42, the official code of Georgia annotated related to conditions of detention generally relative to correctional institutions in the state and county, so as to provide consent for the release of certain criminal history, vocational, and educational information for inmates upon release, to provide for issuance of an identification card and a program and treatment completion certificate, to provide for related matters, for repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the House offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 147, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 3, Chapter 5 of Title 42 of the official code of Georgia annotated related to conditions of detention generally relative to correctional institutions of state and county, so as to provide consent for release of certain criminal history, vocational, and educational information for inmates upon release, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize Senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. President, my fellow senators, colleagues, friends, and y'all. Simple bill. This legislation will allow the Georgia Department of Correction to give inmates being released documents relevant to finding work after they're released. It'll make sure that all American citizens leaving as inmates get a second chance. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield well.
All right, is any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Recognize Senator from the 43rd. For what purpose do you rise, Senator?
I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 17th.
All right, without objection, the senator from the 17th is excused. All right, the senator from the 33rd has moved that the Senate agree to House substitute to Senate Bill 147. All those in favor would vote yea, opposed nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of SB 47, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0, and this motion has prevailed. Senator from the 6th, glad to see you made it back today.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate agree to the House amendment to the Senate substitute to HB 58.
Is there anything, we weren't interrupting anything of yours, were we? Just want to make sure.
You know, Mr. President, I was just in my office and watching
Just doing
you on the
people's work.
TV.
You just
and
doing
you
people's work.
You know, you look like a movie star on TV, and then I get down here and I see you in
Yeah.
person, and I'm just not as impressed as I was when you're on TV.
I know, I get that every day too. Feels like I'm at home. All right, Secretary, read the caption. Actually, can we just skip over this? Actually, let's just skip over the senator from the 6th real quick altogether. I'm kidding. Here we go. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 58 by Representative Richardson, the 125th and others, bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 1 of Title 6 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated with two general provisions relative to aviation so as to authorize the adoption of local ordinances, resolutions, regulations, or policies that restrict the flight of unmanned aircraft systems or for mass public gatherings, to provide for definitions, to provide for related matters, for bill-looking laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the House offers the following amendment to amend the Senate substitute to House Bill 58 by replacing lines 49 through 51 with the following: is conducting official business. D, is an employee of a water, sewer, electrical, telephone, cable, or other regulated utility service provider and is conducting official business and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize the senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll remind my colleagues, HB 58 is the drone bill over ticketed events, and the amendment in the House allows for individuals to fly a drone within the 400-foot buffer over their own property with some restrictions on that activity. That's simply the simple changes in it. I'll yield for questions.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you. I urge your favorable consideration. Well, I will comment. Should there be an amendment at this time, I do not support the amendment, but I believe there's some fast action trying to work on an agreement, but I don't know that we're going to meet that agreement. So far, I don't agree.
Recognize the senator from 30. For what purpose do you rise?
Thank you. Does the gentleman yield?
If I didn't, I wouldn't have walked all the way back down here.
Good answer. If the
Whoa.
amendment was to support more freedom, would you still be against the amendment?
If it was, but the problem with the amendment right now is they are already covered, and so we're delaying. This bill is going to end up ping-ponging back and forth, but they were already covered under a Section B, and I feel like it's an unnecessary amendment. If they can come up with a better solution, I'm good with it, but right now, from what I've seen, I just can't support it.
Well, I greatly appreciate your explanation on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have a couple more questions, Senator. Recognize the senator from the 31st. Oh, no, excuse me. Recognize the senator from the 23rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Yield from
Is
a
it
good
not
friend.
true that the current bill in its underlying form protects the access that's been requested?
It is my understanding, the way I read it, that it does, because it's saying that you can't interfere with the ticketed event, and the concern is from I think it's directly WSB maybe, I'm not sure, but someone is right next door to a ticketed venue where they have tickets. But if they're not interfering with that event, so if they're just reporting on the news, they're not interfering with that event, then they're covered. And
That's
the
my
bill
understanding
states
as well,
that.
Senator, and I find that any changes are unnecessary. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you.
You have no further questions, Senator.
Thank you. Urge your consideration for HB 58.
Recognize the senator for what purpose you rise, Senator? Senator from the 31st.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate agree to House amendment to the Senate substitute HB 58 as amended by Amendment 1.
Secretary, read the caption.
Mr. President, Senator Amatarte, the 31st, and others offered the following amendment number 1 to amend the amendment to the Senate substitute of House Bill 58 by replacing lines 6 through 10 with the following. E is an owner of a private property who is operating an unmanned aircraft system that he or she owns above such property, provided that such operation is consistent with federal regulations and the unmanned aircraft system is not used to interfere in any way with a ticketed entertainment event or to broadcast or record the ticketed entertainment event for commercial purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize Senator from the 31st.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I bring you amendment number 1, and I do thank my colleague from the 6th, but do want to address the treachery related to what's in front of us today. Amendment number 1, all it does is tighten up the language in the sub that came back from the House to make sure that amendment number 1 achieves and makes sure that private property owners are protected. There is no interference, but it also makes sure too that for broadcasters in this state that they are protected under the First Amendment, and also too the rules of engagement as it relates to them, and also too, third, make sure that those broadcasters under this amendment, they still cannot record or take content or anything of that effect from a ticketed event and resell it or sell it on the market or use it for other purposes. So I think it achieves all of the goals, but it just makes sure that accidentally we do not loop in our friends from the broadcasting community into this bill. And I do believe, Mr. President, we have time to amend it, send it back to the House, and get it to the governor as quick as possible. With that, I'll yield. Thank you, Mr. President. I can't leave the well
All right.
because of the dean.
Recognize
Thank you, Mr. Dean.
Dean of the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is it true that the Augusta National supports this bill and this amendment weakens the bill? Is that true?
No, so Augusta National supports the underlying bill, but this amendment does nothing to weaken it. If anything, it makes it stronger. All the protections that Augusta National wants in this bill remain in place. All this is doing is just making sure that during a moment of event or an emergency, that broadcasters are not constricted because the language in the amendment was written too broad.
Recognize the senator from the 41st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, do you yield?
Yes, ma'am.
So just so I'm understanding your amendment, you're trying to make sure that people can still broadcast the event as long as they don't interfere with it and are not profiting from it. Is that true?
So number 1, in terms of profiting or recording or anything of that case, this amendment does not change that. It protects, I think, the protections that the House has sent to us in their language. All this bill is basically saying that if I'm a broadcaster, and for our news friends out there, use WSB as an example, if they're flying one of their drones, and let's say that there's a event of community interest, such as a structure fire, there's been a shooting, or there's been something near that facility or area or property, that broadcasters under federal rules and state rules do not get constricted in terms of where they can fly that drone, but it also does not impede on private property. So all we're doing is making it very clear and very strict in terms of that language, where we believe in the bill that came from the House, it's written too broad.
Do you further yield?
Yes, ma'am.
So does your amendment, I don't think it does, who is a broadcaster? What constitutes a broadcast? Could I, as just an individual private person, broadcast directly to my YouTube channel, and that would allow me to continue to fly my drone over these things?
No, the broadcasters we're talking about are designated news organizations across the state, whether it's radio or TV, that maybe you would find in your local community, or we see here across Metro Atlanta, or our local radio stations like WGAA in Cedartown, Georgia.
So is that defined somewhere else that's not here in your amendment? Because in the amendment it just says broadcast. It doesn't define who the broadcasters are. So I'm just a little concerned that instead of tightening it, which I understand is your intent, that it is actually broadening it by not telling me who broadcasters are.
No,
That's
I
my
think
concern, isn't it true?
Yeah, I think it's achieving the goal.
I'm sorry, say it, could you repeat that?
No, this amendment is achieving the goal.
Okay, thank you.
With that, Mr. President, I'm going to yield.
Senator has yielded. Recognize Senator from the 14th.
Good afternoon, colleagues. If you had guessed that the senator from the 31st and I would be up here on a pro-freedom amendment together today, then you're a good guesser. Here's why the House version of this bill goes too far. You've got the House Amendment 390466 in front of you. It's one page. What this bill does underlying this amendment is important to note. If you're within 400 feet of a ticketed event, you lose your rights. You lose your freedom, you lose your private property rights to fly a drone on your own property. I'm going to say that one more time. The way that the bill is written, without the exceptions, the underlying bill, if you are on your own private property and you happen to have that property within 400 feet of a ticketed event, you cannot fly the drone over your own airspace, okay? Now, what the people in the hallway will tell you is there's some exceptions to that, so we don't just nuke it for everybody. One of the exceptions is B subparagraph that says as long as you're operating in accordance with federal regulations, you're fine. I want to get back to that in just 1 minute, but here's what lines 6 through 10 of the House amendment does that are problematic. The House amendment says, yeah, if you're an owner of private property who's operating above your own property, provided that it's not used for commercial purposes whatsoever. Any commercial purposes. Now, we can talk about freedom writ large. If you're a YouTuber and you want to make videos above your house, that's your God-given right. But let's also talk about broadcasters. WSB is located right by a theater. If that theater has a ticketed event, it's like an electromagnetic pulse that goes out legally and says you cannot operate a drone if you're WSB above WSB's property because it's within 400 feet of a ticketed event. No, not minding whatsoever that WSB is not trying to film the ticketed event, which this amendment, my amendment with the Senator from the 31st, protects that. Right now, under the House version, WSB gets knocked out from recording altogether, not to mention the countless other property owners who might have the unfortunate circumstance of being situated within 400 feet of a ticketed event. So let's talk about the Senator from the 41st question about broadcasters. The hallway is using talking points right now that are in response to a previous version of an amendment. There was an amendment attempted in committee that would have given broadcasters a free pass to just run around everywhere, and that would be a problem if you couldn't define who a broadcaster was. But this amendment that we're doing right now is not specific to broadcasters. This is a private property amendment. It's all private property owners, with broadcasters just being one of the interested parties. Let me get to the final argument that the hallway is making. The hallway is saying that, well, don't worry, they don't need this protection because they've already got B, which is complying with federal regulations. But if I'm a court, and I'm just being 100% serious, I had no dog in this fight before session, so I don't have any particular bias or reason why I would care one way or the other, just trying to tell it like it is. If you're a court and you've got a B subparagraph that says, as long as you operate in federal regulations, you're fine, and an E subsection that says, more specifically, if you're a private property owner, you cannot fly under these conditions, the court's going to defer to the more specific text and say, well, obviously the legislature intended for private property owners not to be able to fly above their own property for commercial purposes within 400 feet of an event. So I understand that the politics are that Augusta National and its lobbyists are concerned about the possible leeway, exemptions, whatever that people could find. The one argument we've heard is that if you just attach a banner with a message to your drone, you could circumvent. No, because your purpose would still be to film Augusta National. Your purpose would still be to film Music Midtown. So all this amendment does is say that if you are a private property owner and you are complying with federal regulations and you're not interfering with the event and you're not filming the event for commercial purposes, specifically not filming the event, meaning like making your own bootleg version of Music Midtown or Augusta, whatever, the Masters, As long as you're playing by the rules and you're not trying to film the event for your own commercial purposes, yes, you can film on your own private property if there's something going on in your neighborhood, whatever. So this is a pro-freedom amendment. I'm sorry for it's a complex issue and there's a lot of moving parts, but the bottom line is the House version that the senator from the 6th is carrying says you can't film on your own property if you're within 400 feet of an event. The Senate version says you can film on your own property when you're within 400 feet of an event, as long as you're not trying to make a bootleg copy. Mr. President, I will yield for any questions.
You do have a few questions, Senator. Recognize the senator from the 29th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
I do.
Senator, I've heard your impassioned plea, and I just would like to know how important are private property rights in the state of Georgia?
Well, it depends on what type of property you're talking about, because there's lots of different types, but they're all important to me, Senator.
Well, what I'm trying to say is who should make the rules, as long as it's not a violation of law, on what happens on private property?
I think for the most part, the private property owner, we defer to the owner about what's best for the property, because that's the whole point of private property, with some limitations around the edges.
Senator, further yield?
Yes.
So is what I hear you say is what goes on private property, we should lean into the rights of the property owner and let them decide what happens on their property, as long as it is not illegal activity. Would that be true?
It's a default setting with some limits, because everything in law is it depends, Senator. Yeah.
Thank you.
Recognize the senator from the 50th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
I do.
Would you consider this amendment an amendment unlike any other?
They're saying it's the best amendment. Yes, Senator. Thank you.
Recognize the senator from the 13th.
Senator Yield.
I do, Senator.
Go over with me, if you don't mind, one more time. You can fly, if your property were to back up to, let's just use the golf course, for example.
Right.
Your property backs up to the golf course.
Yep.
You can fly your drone on your designated half acre, quarter acre, whatever you have. If you're filming, how are you going to know if someone's filming? How are you going to? How do we police that part of it if somebody's filming?
So this is a great point. It's hard to police, but also it's hard for the landowners to know what their rights are. So let's say I live right by any ticketed event. That's any concert, any golf tournament, whatever. I'm just filming my own stuff for my YouTube channel, or I'm a broadcaster who's trying to film the news. It's got nothing to do with the ticketed event. But if you're within 400 feet, the House version knocks you out, so you can't record, right? Now, in terms of enforcement, maybe you accidentally get a snippet as you're rotating and then somebody from the master says, oh, they're trying to, sell a version of this, whatever, and they come get on you. Maybe that's how they enforce it. But the point is this: regardless of enforcement, the House version says if you have the unfortunate luck of being within 400 feet of a ticketed event, even if you don't give a whatever about the ticketed event, you're recording something else, you are knocked out. You are blacked out for the duration of the event. Senate version says, as long as you're not making a bootleg copy of that event, you're good to go, because it's your private property.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Recognize the senator from the 30th.
Does this gentleman yield?
I do, Senator.
Okay. You believe in property rights, correct?
I do. I'm glad we had that conversation. Yeah.
Great. So what you can do on your property should stop at your property line, correct?
Correct.
So 400 feet off your property is not your property, is it not?
It seems a little strange that if Jason Isbell comes for a concert at the Tabernacle, if I want to operate my drone on my property 300 feet away, I have nothing to do with the concert, and the House bill bans me from doing it. That's where we're at.
So basically with this 400 feet, you're telling someone else what they can or cannot do on their own property. Is that not correct?
That is what I'm saying.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. If there are no further questions, I'll yield the well, Mr. President.
No further questions, Senator. Senator from the 6th, you like to close debate?
Colleagues, this time of year, we see it time and time again. Delay tactics. That's all this is delay tactics. Everything in this amendment is in the bill currently. FAA certified pilots are already exempted on lines 46 and 47. News gatherers, the media, are already exempted. This is not needed. This is a tactic to force this bill back to the House. And what upsets me the most about it, other than it being a conspiracy, it's a conspiracy that I'm not a part of. Vote down this amendment. Let's get this bill to the governor's desk and get it moving. This bill is not for Augusta National. They are already covered under their local ordinances. This bill is for America.
We have a late arriving amendment. Secretary, read the amendment.
Mr. President, Senator McLaurin, the 14th, offered the following amendment, number 1A, to amend Amendment 1 to the House Amendment to the Senate substitute of House Bill 58 by inserting a comma after regulations on line 5 and inserting to convey or communicate a message by any person other than a first informer broadcaster as defined in OCGA Section 38-3-57 after not used on line 5. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Senators from the 14th. How'd you write that amendment while you're standing here in the well?
Mr. President, I apologize for coming up twice, but I didn't know I was able to file it, but it is consistent with the rules. The hallway mentioned that they were worried that somebody could skirt the rules by just attaching a banner to a drone and saying, oh, it's to send a message. So the House version has good language in it saying you can't just be using it to send a banner or message, whatever. So I'm putting an amendment with the consent of the author, I think so, on the amendment that I'm like, no, but what it does is it replicates that House language and basically just says that nobody but a first informer broadcaster as defined in the code is allowed to use the drone to send a message on their own private property. So it's just smoothing over and making sure that one of the complaints raised about the underlying amendment here in the Senate, that's smoothed over. I yield for any questions, but that's basically what it is.
Senator from the 31st.
Will Senator yield?
I do, Senator, yes.
Senator, isn't it not true that, to the Senator's 6th point, if there's a conspiracy and it's a good conspiracy, it's never too late to join the conspiracy?
It is never too late, and may I suggest to the body humbly that if the Senator from the 31st and I are rowing in the same direction on something this passionately, it's because we both really believe it. So,
and will you yield for one last
I will, Senator,
question?
Yeah.
Senator, is it not true that our amendment affects all Georgians, not just one segment of Georgians in one part of the state, but we're trying to fight and advocate, I think, for all Georgians, protect their property, but also protect the First Amendment. Is that not true?
That's right. I mean, there's a huge transition from committee to the floor. Committee, we talked a lot more about broadcasters specifically. This amendment that you're voting on right now is truly about every Georgian's private property rights. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll yield the will.
Does any other senator wish to join in on the conspiracy? So we're going to take up 1A, authored by the senator from the 14th. Is there objection to 1A? Without objection, 1A is amended. So now we're at Senate agreed to House Bill 58 as amended by Amendment 1. Is there objection? Now you object. All right. All those in favor of the amendment will vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On amendment number 1, the yeas are 12 and the nays are 41, and so this amendment fails. So now the senator from the 6th has moved that the Senate agree to House amendment to the Senate substitute on HB 58. All those in favor will vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the motion to agree, the yeas are 54 and the nays are 0, and this motion has prevailed. Recognize the senator from the 50th for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute to SB 154.
Secretary. Senator from the 27th, what purpose do you rise?
I'd ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 48th.
Without objection, the senator from the 48th is excused. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 154 by Senator Hatchett, the 50th, and others, bill to be entitled an act to amend titles 20, 35, and 43, the official code of Georgia annotated, related to education, law enforcement officers, and agencies, and professions and businesses, respectively, so as to revise or remove references to the United States Department of Education from the official code of Georgia annotated, to replace a reference to student aid reports with FAFSA submission summary, to provide for related matters, to provide for effective date, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the House offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 154, a bill to be entitled an act to amend titles 20, 35, and 43, the official code of Georgia annotated, related to education, law enforcement officers, and agencies, and professions and businesses, respectively, so as to revise or remove references to the United States Department of Education from the official code of Georgia annotated, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize the senator from the 50th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rise to ask you to stick with me and agree on the House amendment to Senate Bill 154. We had a pretty robust discussion about this bill earlier in session. There was an amendment that was made over in the House, and it passed out of the House 144 to 15. The amendment was to the effective date. This bill changes our Georgia Code section and our Georgia Code in 25 different sections where it references the U.S. Department of Education and adds or its successor. The amendment in the House changed the effective date for this to become effective upon an act of Congress repealing the establishment of the United States Department of Education or otherwise abolishing the United States Department of Education. So I'd ask for your favorable consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions.
You have one question. Senator from the 53rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will Senator yield?
I will.
All right. So what if Congress doesn't abolish the Department of Education, but our president abolishes the Department of Education? Then what would happen?
So the U.S. Department of Education can only be abolished through an act of Congress.
Can you repeat that answer?
The U.S. Department of Education can only be abolished through an act of Congress.
So if the President of the United States does not allocate those funds to the Department of Education, would it effectively be abolished?
I think you make a good point that it arguably could be, but legally, and I think President Trump has also recognized this, that Congress needs to act if he is going to abolish the U.S. Department of Education.
Okay. Thank you, Senator.
You have no further questions, Senator?
No more?
No more.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hearing none. The motion by the Senator 50th is that the Senate agree to the House substitute on SB 154. All those in favor will vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. Senator from the 27th, for what purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that I previously excused the senator from the 48th?
You did.
I did not see an E next to his name on the board, Governor.
Well, it was a mistake on our part then, Senator. We'll correct it on the next one. Maybe he won't get beat up too bad in his next election. On the passage of the motion to the House substitute, the yeas are 44 and the nays are 8, and this motion has prevailed. Senator from 50th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we remove House Bill 270 from the table.
Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 270 by Representative Reeves in the 99th and others, a bill to entitle an act to amend Article 7, Chapter 10, and Title 9 of the OCGA related to continuances so as to provide for the continuance and stay of proceedings related to eviction of tenants at certain airports, to provide for a definition, to amend Code Section 44-7-51 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated related to issuance of summons, service time for answer and defenses and counterclaims so as to provide for service by an approved process server and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Is there objection? Recognize Senator from the 50th.
House Bill 270 by Representative Reeves in the 99th and others, bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 7, Chapter 11, Title 9 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland, Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Senator Wells, yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 270 is a simple bill. It's a cleanup bill that amends OCGA 44-751 to mirror OCGA 911-4, which will codify in statute to allow an approved process server to serve dispossessory actions. This is something that's commonly been done, but due to a recent Court of Appeals decision, there's some doubt as to whether or not it's technically proper for a process server to serve these, but this will just codify that so that common practice can be officially codified in state code. I'm happy to yield for any questions.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Does any senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question be in order? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection? Main question be in order. Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 49, the nays are 0. And this bill, having received requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Senator from the 29th. Senator from the 29th, you ready?
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent to lift House Bill 216 from the table.
Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 216 by Representative Smith and 138th and others. Bill to Town and Act to amend Chapter 7, Title 50, the OCGA relates to the Department of Economic Development as to create the Georgia Chips and Advanced Technology Commission to provide for the purpose, membership, and duties of such commission, to amend Chapter 34, Title 50, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Is there objection?
House Bill 216 by Representative Smith, the 138th and others. Bill to Town and Act to amend Chapter 7, Title 50, OCGA, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Economic Development and Tourism recommends that this bill to pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Beach, Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
I recognize Senator from the 29th. Speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. As many of you are most likely familiar with this was the Richard Smith CHIPS Act. It passed out of this chamber and the House last session. Due to some technical issues related to putting the commission together, we have made a change on line 51 where you see the commission shall stand abolished on June 30, 2028 is the primary difference in this from last year. And with that, Mr. President, I'll yield for any questions.
You do have a question, Senator. Recognize Dean of the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
I do yield to my good friend from Columbus.
Thank you. I just want to commend once more your efforts in this effort to move the CHIPS program that's going to make a great impact economically for the Valley area in the Chattahoochee Valley and in honor of the late Richard Smith. So,
to my friend from the 15th, you absolutely know the respect I have for you and how much that means to me. You stepping up and not only recognizing the effort that you and I and the community that we serve have put out for this, but also the tremendous effort that our good friend Richard Smith did for developing economic development in and around Columbus. And I'm very grateful for your words.
thank you, sir. Great, good bill.
Thank you, sir. And with that, Mr. President, I'll yield the well. Ask for everybody's consideration for this legislation.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hearing none. All those in favor of the senator's motion? Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committees which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. Report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection? The main question being ordered. Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50 and the nays are 2. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Senator from the 27th.
Mr. President, I ask that H.R. 7 be removed from the table. I move,
Secretary,
I should say.
read the caption.
House Resolution 7 by Representative Campbell, the 171st resolution honoring the life of Mr. George C. Trulick Jr. and dedicating a road in his memory and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Is there objection? Without objection, Secretary, finish.
House Resolution 7 by Representative Campbell, the 171st resolution honoring the life of Mr. George C. Trulick and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Transportation recommends that this resolution do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Dolezal, Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Transportation offers the following substitute to House Resolution 7, a resolution dedicating certain portions of the state highway system and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize the senator from the 27th.
All right, colleagues, this is our second road naming bill of the day. This is this year's road naming bill. What we've done is we have taken a House resolution and inserted a number of road namings from the Senate. I'm just going to read the names of folks that are recognized in this resolution, and that should be the names that a lot of you recognize. Dr. Gregory Levitt, Mr. Johnny Floyd, Mr. Tyler Perry, Mr. Jeff Foxworthy, Mr. Kerry Williams, Mr. George Trulock, Mr. George Strickland, Mr. Samuel Moon, Miss Ajanya Hill, Trooper William Black, Investigator Eric Minix, Sergeant Patrick Sondren, Deputy Darrell Smallwood, the Honorable Sheila McNeil, served in this chamber, Trooper Chase Redner, and Mrs. Martha K. Tucker. Those are the names that we are honoring with this year's road naming bill. We did send a Senate resolution over to the House as well that had at least one person that we recognize. Then some of you have had standalone road naming bills. But if you were expecting to hear a name and did not hear it called, please let me know. We do have a remedy, provided you have ran your ad and your no conflict letter. But this, I think, captures almost all of the Senate road namings that we have, with the exceptions of ones that they either ran on their own or already over in the House. That, Mr. President, happy to answer any questions. If there are none, I'll yield the well.
You do have one question. Senator from the 29th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
I do.
Senator, was it intentional to leave the name of the U.S. Treasurer Beach off of that list?
You know, Mr. Whip, it was not intentional to leave him off. I think that the future treasurer probably is worthy of being recognized in his community at some point in time, but that is not a resolution that has been dropped at this time.
Do you think that's something we can work out on off session and possibly get that done next year?
I would love to work with you on that.
Thank you,
Mr. Whip. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. Previous question is ordered. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the reporting committee which is favorable to the adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none. The reporting committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. Main question is ordered. All those in favor of the resolution will vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. Senator from the 23rd, for what purpose do you rise? Senator from the 23rd. That's you. On the adoption of the resolution, the yeas are 49 and the nays are 0. This resolution has received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted by substitution. The senator from the 20th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to remove House Bill 511 from the table.
Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 511 by Representative Lumsden, the 12th and others, bill to be and act to amend Chapter 32 of Title 33 of Code Section 48-7-27, a Fish Code Georgia annotated, related to property insurance and computation of taxable net income, respectively, so as to provide for deductions from taxable income for contributions by taxpayers to catastrophe savings accounts and interest earned on such accounts, to establish limits for contributions to such accounts, to provide for definitions, to provide for related matters, to provide for an effective date and applicability to conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Is there objection? Objection. Secretary, finish the cap.
House Bill 511 by Representative Lumsden, the 12th and others, bill to be entitled Act to amend Chapter 32, Title 33 of Code Section 48-7-27 of the CGA and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Hufstetler, Chairman. Mr. President, if a fiscal note has been attached, and that completes the order.
Recognize the senator from the 20th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, House Bill 511 works very similar to a health savings account, if you're familiar with a health savings account, so that a health savings account allows you to carry a higher deductible on your health insurance and put money in a health savings account and get a tax deduction. It puts the consumer back in sort of the mix on that and helps you lower your premium. This is the same concept for homeowners insurance, and it encourages self-reliance from our citizens and personal responsibility to prepare for a natural disaster, to set aside some money to be ready in the event you suffered from a property loss from a natural disaster, and not, be totally relying on the government or non-profits to help you out. So what it does is you would be able to, based on the level of deductible that you have on your homeowner's insurance, you would be allowed to either put up to $2,000 into a health savings or a catastrophe savings account and get a tax deduction. If you have a deductible of higher than $1,000, you could put up to $25,000 or twice the amount of the deductible. So if you had a $1,000 deductible, you'd still be at $2,000. If you had a $5,000 deductible, you could put up to $10,000 and get a tax deduction. But it's to help our citizens prepare for the possibility of a catastrophe damaging their home, and gives them an incentive to do that. Mr. President, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to yield. Otherwise, I ask for your favorable consideration.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. Previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor will vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 54, the nays are 0. This bill, having received a requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Secretary Reed, I recognize Senator from the 18th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that HB 327 be removed from the table.
Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 327 by Representative Leverett of the 123rd and others. The bill to be entitled and act to amend Chapter 1, Title 7 of the OCGA related to financial institutions, to amend Chapter 6B of Title 10 of the OCGA related to Georgia power of attorney, to amend Code Section 15-9-127 of the OCGA related to concurrent jurisdiction with superior courts and probate court jurisdiction, to amend Title 19 OCGA and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection? Without objection.
House Bill 327 by Representative Leverett of the 123rd and others. Bill to be entitled and act to amend Chapter 1 of Title 7 of the OCGA related to financial institutions, to amend Chapter 6B of Title 10 of the OCGA and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland, Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the pro tem. Speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know the afternoon is getting on into the hours, but this is the moment you've waited for. The annual rewrite of the fiduciary law section for the State Bar of Georgia. I know you've been waiting. There you go. Come on. Yes, there you go. You do love it, and that proves it. Oh, the people outside love you for that. Trust me. Over the past 25 years, the General Assembly has made significant changes in the laws of wills, probates, administrations of estates, guardianships, and other things like that. The probate court was revised. The code, rather, was revised in 1998. The guardianship code was revised in 2005. The trust code in 2010, and the Uniform Power of Attorney Act was adopted in 2017. As you probably know, because I've told you this in years past, this is something that the State Bar of Georgia fiduciary section has lawyers that review the code sections involving these types of laws to update them, to make sure that they're consistent, make sure that they're harmonized, and make sure that they're where they should be relative to all the other statutes. There's several sections that are revised. Most of them, I would tell you, are fairly small tweaks. The bill is not a uniform act, as some of you are familiar with the Uniform Act laws, but some of the provisions of the proposed legislation are modeled on provisions of the Uniform Prudent Investor Act of 1994, the Uniform Electronic Transactions Act of 1999, the Uniform Trust Code of 2000, and the Uniform Electronic Estate Planning Documents of 2022. House Bill 327 was drafted by the Code Revision Committee and was introduced by the House of Representatives, by Representative Leverett. Again, there are numerous sections that deal with fiduciary law. I'm happy to answer any questions about them in particular, but I gather you probably are anxious to make the masses happy and give a good positive vote on this so we can get this taken care of. Mr. President, I'm happy to answer questions, or I'll be happier to yield the well.
You have no questions, Senator.
All right, thank you. Let's get her done, y'all. Thanks.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? How about my little three stooges back there, you know, my three lawyers back there, y'all? Y'all don't have a question on anything?
You want us to ask a question, Mr. President?
I mean, y'all look very curious.
Well, Mr. President, this bill actually includes in vitro fertilization, AIDS, terrorism, and so many other issues. We were stunned, and we were really proud of the work that the Senate Judiciary Committee did on this. If you notice, they did a lot of amendments.
Oh, so y'all just wanted to compliment then. Y'all did a wonderful job. We're proud of you.
Well, it was under your leadership, Mr. President.
You're right. All right. Any objections? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the reporting committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The reporting committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor, vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. Back to special actions here. Recognize Senator from the 50th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute Senate Bill 141.
Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 141 by Senator Hatchett.
Got to call the vote on House Bill 327. I apologize for that. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 49, the nays are 0. This bill, having received a requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed.
Senate Bill 141 by Senator Hatchett of the 50th and others, bills being titled an act to amend Title 48 of the Federal Code of Georgia annotated related to revenue and taxation so as to extend the appeal and protest period from 30 days to 45 days for tax assessments, to clarify final determination language for federal income tax adjustments, to provide for related matters, to provide for effective date and applicability, to reveal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the House offered the following substitutes: Senate Bill 141. Bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated related to revenue and taxation so as to extend the appeal and protest period from 30 days to 45 days for tax assessments, to clarify final determination language for federal income tax adjustments, to provide for extensions and preferential assessment periods for historic properties, to provide for related matters, to provide for an effective date, to bill conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize Senator from the 50th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to bring you Senate Bill 141. This is a department bill for DOR. There are outside groups that rank states based on their friendliness to taxpayers. Right now, Georgia is graded at a B-, and with small changes, it could potentially go up to an A or an A+. What this does is it extends the time that a taxpayer has from 30 to 45 days, and it also states that the commissioner has to make an assessment within 1 year. Two friendly things for taxpayers, and I ask for your favorable consideration. With that, Mr. President, I will yield the will. Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hearing none. Senator has moved that the Senate agree to House substitute of Senate Bill 141. All those in favor will vote yea. All those opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. Senator from the 2nd, for what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 26th.
Yeah, it'll have to be the next cycle, but we will. On the motion to agree, the yeas are 47 and the nays are 6, and this motion has prevailed. Recognize the senator from the 27th.
I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute to Senate Bill 140.
Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 140 by Senator Dolezal, the 27th, and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 30, Title 43, the Official Code of Georgia annotated related to optometrists, so as to provide for doctors of optometry to dispense and sell pharmaceutical agents to patients under certain conditions, to provide for related matters, to provide for an effective date, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the House offers the following substitutes: Senate Bill 140, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 4, Title 26, and Chapter 30, Title 43, the OCGA, related to pharmacists and pharmacies and optometrists, respectively, so as to provide for doctors of optometry to dispense and sell pharmaceutical agents to patients under certain conditions, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize the senator from 27th.
Thank you, colleagues. I think all but one of us voted for this bill when it came through the Senate. This allows pharmacists to dispense and sell drugs that they have the ability to prescribe, drugs for the eye and the ocular adnexa, which is the area around the eye. One change that we made in the House, working with the Drug and Narcotics Division, you'll see on line 34 and 35, and this just requires them to comply with an existing code section that physicians also have to comply with relative to the storage and dispensing of medications. That was a good catch by our friends in the department. And other than that, this bill is clean as it passed the Senate. With that, Mr. President, I'm happy to answer any questions.
You do have one question, Senator. Recognize the Senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, you yield?
I do.
Senator, you mentioned it allows pharmacists to dispense. Did you not mean optometrists?
Is that what I said? Yes, thank you for the catch. It allows optometrists to dispense and sell the medications they have the ability to prescribe. Thank you for the catch, Mr. Chairman. With that, Mr. President, I think I need to go drink some coffee, and I'll yield the will.
All right. Any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The senator has moved that the Senate agree to the House substitute on SB 140. All those in favor will vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. Senator from the 42nd.
A wave. I figured it out.
On the motion for the Senate to agree to the House substitute on SB 140, the yeas are 52, the nays are 0, and this motion has prevailed. Recognize the senator from the 16th.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute for SB 121.
Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 121 by Senator Harbin of the 16th and others, a bill to entitle an act to amend Code Section 33-7-11 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated with to uninsured motorist coverage under motor vehicle liability policies, so as to increase the minimum uninsured motorist coverage required under motor vehicle liability policies for an individual convicted of driving under the influence of reckless driving, drive for related matters, drive for an effective date and applicability to repeal conflicting laws and for other purposes. Mr. President, the House offers the following substitutes to Senate Bill 121. Bill to be entitled an act to amend Titles 33 and 40 of the OCGA related to insurance and motor vehicles and traffic respectively, so as to increase the minimum coverage required under a motor vehicle liability policy for an individual convicted of driving under the influence, to provide for the duration of coverage, to require proof of insurance, to provide for definitions, to provide for related matters, to provide for effective date and applicability, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize Senator from the 16th.
SB 121, the House made one small change. They inserted in line 23. This is a bill, the DUI bill, that requires someone who has a DUI to raise their limits to 50, 150 on their first offense, and second offense, 100, 300, 100. And there is one, line 23 is an insert of subsequential between the words, and that's all it is, and they agreed with us. Any questions?
You do have one question, Senator. Recognize Senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I'll yield, sir, my good friend.
I like that sport jacket you have on. Looks very nice. I think it's right for the occasion because isn't this your first bill that you passed through both chambers?
It's possible.
So this is your first bill.
First bill. No, I think we got one or two.
He tried to slide by on us, huh?
I want to also compliment you, since you complimented me on my jacket. I want to thank you for wearing a rhino tie. That is a beautiful tie you have.
You're welcome.
That was pretty quick, Senator. Mm-hmm. This isn't your first bill, is it? This isn't your first bill, is it? No, I didn't think so. All right, all those in favor of the man's first bill to get through both chambers, vote yes. Those who are opposed, vote no. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the motion to agree, the yeas are 51 and the nays are 2, and this motion has prevailed. Happy birthday, too, by the way, Senator. I know we're a day late, but I know it was your birthday over the weekend, wasn't it? Wednesday. So, okay. Well, happy birthday. Didn't you have a party or something, though? Didn't you have a party? Yesterday. Okay. All right. Okay. Secretary, read a message from the House.
Mr. President, the following message was received from the House and Mr. Riley, the clerk thereof. Mr. President, the House is passed by the requisite constitutional majority.
State and local government.
House Bill 756. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize the senator from the 27th.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute for SB 1.
Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 1 by Senator Dolezal, the 27th, and others, the bills being titled and act to amend Title 20 of the OCGA related to education so as to provide generally for competitively fair and safe student participation in middle school, high school, and college sports, promote fair and safe competition, strive for equal athletic opportunities and safety, provide for specific designations of teams operated or sponsored by local school systems, public schools participating, private schools, and post-secondary educational institutions in the state, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the House offers the following substitutes. Senate Bill 1, a bill to be entitled and act to amend Title 20 of the official code of Georgia annotated related to education so as to reenact the Riley-Gaines Act of 2025 to provide generally for competitively fair or safe student competition in school or in college sports, provide for legislative findings and intent to promote fair and safe competition, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize the senator from the 27th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, we voted quite some time ago on Senate Bill 1, and since then the House passed a version of a similar bill that they, I don't remember the bill number, they entitled it the Riley-Gaines Act. And we have worked with our friends in the House, Chairman Bonner, Speaker Burns, Chairman Irwin, and have come up with a compromise with some language that I'll highlight for you that we used from the House, but we're really keeping the core of Senate Bill 1 the same. One of the primary differences, just to begin to highlight these, And if I zoom out a little bit, this is a bill that requires for intercollegiate, interscholastic sports in the state of Georgia for athletes to compete in a category of sport based on their sex. And we have outlined before all the reasons why we think that's important, and I'm going to not have that conversation today unless the questioning goes in that direction. I'm happy to relitigate if that's where the questioning goes, but for now I'd be happy to just talk about the differences between Senate Bill 1 as it passed and the version that you have before you today. First and foremost, you'll see on line 2 and then again on line 26, we have named Senate Bill 1 the Riley-Gaines Act of 2025. You'll also notice that on line 51. We have adopted some House language on definitions of sex, of female and male, on line 63 to 68. It's slightly different from the way that it passed the Senate, but it is similar in that we identify male and female based on reproductive potential. We have used House language in the definition of sex on line 83. Again, very similar vein to what we'd already done, but just tweaked it to recognize some House language there. We've done the same thing on sleeping quarters, again, keeping the spirit of Senate Bill 1, but we have adopted some House language as it relates to the definition of sleeping quarters.
You ready for a question?
No, I'm still going here. I'm just looking at lines 136 to 141. Keeps the spirit of what we had already done in the Senate, but we adopt some House language as it relates to screening, visual screens, and the like. As you recall, we prohibited visual screens, and then we have House language there that allows medical records to be included as evidence to determine student sex. We have House language on line 199 to 207 as it relates to who can be included in these changing areas. Basically, the House had carved out a number of exceptions for athletic trainers, coaches, officials, and similar people. We kept our language as it relates to the appeal process, which the House had used the Professional Standards Commission to adjudicate appeals and complaints. We use the existing complaint process that already exists in Georgia law. And then probably lastly, the largest change is that the House went through multiple areas of Georgia code and replaced the word gender with sex. And we want Senate Bill 1 to remain as a sports bill, specifically focusing on athletic competition. So that is what Senate Bill 1 does. I know there was some conversation in our Senate subcommittee on the House bill as it related to those other areas of the code section that they had worked through, and that is not something that we did originally in Senate Bill 1, nor is it something that we do in this version of Senate Bill 1. With that, Mr. President, I'm happy to answer any questions. If there are none, I'm also happy to yield the well.
Senator from the 41st, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Senator, do you yield?
I do.
Thank you for just walking through this a bit. In our original Senate Bill 1, I believe that there was language that at least acknowledged that there are some people who were born with some type of ambiguity in their there's ambiguity in terms of their sex, and they talked about the XXX chromosomes in our original bill, but in this bill, I don't see that, and so I would just like to know, in the House version, how does a person who is born what we would call intersex, how would they fit into this bill? What team would they be able to play in? What bathroom, if they're playing on a sport, would they be able to play on in this version of the bill? I was clear about that in our version, I'm just not clear here.
Yes. So we had a conversation, I think, in the debate over Senate Bill 1 as it related to DSDs. There was nothing specifically about DSDs in Senate Bill 1. The bill before you did not change anything as it related to definitions around DSDs. We had, the one thing that is different is we had essentially allowed birth certificates to be used as evidence. And we don't exclude those under this bill. We just don't enumerate the various ways that sex can be determined as it relates to this bill. What we do say is that you cannot do visual inspections, you can use medical records. Birth certificates may still be used in that determination. We just don't specifically spell them out. So as it relates to DSDs, we did have conversation in this chamber about that, but there was nothing in the original version of Senate Bill 1 that specifically related to DSDs.
So I apologize for misremembering that. But I will go back to my underlying question, which is, if we were to pass SB 1 in any of its forms, but in the one that's before us, what team would a child who was born intersex be eligible to play on?
It depends. So if you think about the Castor-Semenya case, where they adjudicated a number of things and found that there were internal testes in the Castor-Semenya case, and the governing bodies at that time ruled that the Olympics were, I believe, correct in their original decision. That was based on, I believe, some molecular testing that was done, and you could do similar molecular testing to look for the SYR gene, which is the sex-determining gene. And as you know, Senator, usually there's mutations on that gene or other genes that relate to these DSDs that we see. But what we look for is, but for these abnormalities or any sort of thing that may have happened differently, what is the reproductive potential of that particular human? So if we take probably the most famous case, and I'm just naming the Semenya case because it probably is the most famous case as it relates to that, would that same case happen in Georgia under this law? A student who had the same DSD as Semenya would participate in male sports.
Do you further yield?
I do.
So I understand on an elite level what you're talking about, but are you suggesting that a sixth grader would have to go through some type of extensive testing, like what you just named, molecular testing, in order to determine which team he or she was able to play upon? Is that what you're suggesting for sixth graders?
No, I think as it relates to the sixth graders, to participate in that level of sports, you usually just have a physical that is done to participate before the sporting season. Those physicals often identify the sex of that individual. That person could also use a birth certificate. You could bring in really a whole body of evidence to make that determination if that's what needed to happen.
And would you yield for one more question?
I do.
I believe my colleague will be bringing an amendment about this, but I'd love for you to speak to line 531. This is still related to how we determine the sex of a child. But line 31 talks about being able to use other standard medical procedures to verify or confirm a student's athlete's sex. What is a standard school medical procedure that would be used to confirm a student's sex?
Yeah, that's referencing the physical that would be done to participate in sports. And I have not I was actually walking slowly, you probably saw me. I did not get a chance to review the senator's amendment. I saw the lines that were referenced. I don't know the change that he is specifically seeking to make. I'll review that when I get back to my desk and maybe speak about that in my close. But this is really kind of opening the door to that physical that would happen, or anything else that may happen in terms of a student participating in athletics at the either K through 12 or collegiate level.
So do you contend that a physical is a medical procedure? Is that what you're suggesting is happening under this bill?
I think that's what that section of the bill is speaking to, the medical records or other standard school medical procedures. That is what I believe the bill is speaking to there, yes,
Okay,
Senator.
thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you.
Recognize the senator from the 44th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the chairman yield?
I will.
Thank you. Senator, to follow up on the senator from the 41st comment, is it standard operating procedure to have physicals before enrolling in sports in Georgia's schools?
It is my understanding that from my conversations with folks in the House who work specifically on this issue that is a common thing. I know that when I participated in sports, it was not in Georgia, but we had to have a physical to go through a number of things to make sure it was safe for us to participate in sport, yes.
Fascinating. All right, thank you.
You say, okay.
More
I
questions?
yielded well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mm-hmm. See any other senator wish to speak? Senator from the 38th. You need to make a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute to Senate Bill 1 as amended by Amendment 1.
Secretary, read the caption.
Mr. President, Senator Kemp of the 38th and others offer the following amendment number 1 to amend the House substitute to Senate Bill 1 by striking or on line 530 and the entirety of line 531. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize Senator from 38th. Speak to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'm not going to relitigate why we are opposed to Senate Bill 1 and don't want to draw this out, but I do want to call your attention to lines 530, 531, as we just heard in the line of questioning. And let me first say that I truly appreciate the senator from the 27th for agreeing to my amendment during the education hearing in which we ensured that no child would be physically checked to have their sex verified. The House added some language which is very ambiguous and not clear. I can't think of another standard school medical procedure to verify or confirm a student's sex. So this amendment would just strike that language. It still allows for schools to check a birth certificate, as was mentioned earlier, and it still allows for a reliance on medical records. This amendment would just strike the line 531 in its entirety to stop at medical records. I don't see the need for adding other standard school medical procedures. All students have physicals when they begin sports, so I can't think, having worked in a school at various levels, think of a standard school medical procedure to verify any child's sex. So I'm just offering that we would strike line 531 and end at medical records. With that, Mr. President, I'll take any questions. If not, I will yield the well.
You have no questions, Senator.
All right, thank you, sir.
Do any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Senator from 27th, you'd like to close debate?
Thank you, Mr. President, colleagues. I would remind everyone that the last section of this bill relates to intercollegiate athletics. So the first section of the bill is for K through 12 covered entities, and the back section of this bill is related to intercollegiate athletics, which I think the senator from the 41st loosely referenced at least this concept of the elite athletes. And we do know that certainly at the collegiate level, testosterone testing is something that is done routinely. Testing for banned substances and performance-enhancing drugs is done very routinely. And I think that in addition to the physical that I mentioned, I think that that is what this section of the bill is speaking to. And I would just remind my colleagues that this section of the bill is exclusive to the intercollegiate, so the college level athletics, where certainly the competition is more fierce and the testing and rules are often more place the athletes under more scrutiny for their use of any sort of androgens or things like that. So, colleagues, I want to thank members of both parties who supported this bill the first time it came through. This is a bill that seeks to ensure fairness and safety for female sport here in the state of Georgia. And with that, I would ask for your favorable consideration, and I would yield the well.
Senators yielded. Senator from the 40th, do you have a question, or you have?
Well, I had a question for the gentleman in the well, and he yielded. So, although I could do a parliamentary inquiry, isn't it true that the language about standard school medical procedures to verify or confirm a student's sex is also found on line 140, which I believe is the section that deals with the younger children?
I would just have to take your word for it, Senator. So posture is the senator from the 38 has moved that we substitute SB 1 as amended by Amendment 1. All those in favor of his motion will vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the motion, the yeas are 17 and the nays are 37, so that motion fails. Now we're back to the original motion by the senator from the 27th. The senator agreed to the House substitute on SB 1. All those in favor of that motion will vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the motion to agree, the yeas are 34 and the nays are 20, and this motion has prevailed. All right, we'll be back to removing bills from the table. Recognize the senator from the 46. Senator, you got to make your motion. You got to make your motion first.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that House Bill 416 be lifted from the table.
Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 416 by Representative Estration, the 104th and others, a bill to entitle an act to amend Chapter 88 of Title 36 of the OCGA related to enterprise zones so as to revise the class of retailer from which fees may be collected, to revise the period of existence of enterprise zones, to provide for related matters, repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Is there objection? That objection recognized senator from the 46. Thanks.
House Bill 416 by Representative Estration, 104th and others, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Cowsert, Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to figure this out here eventually. This is a bill to try to clean up a initiative of Governor Deal and Mayor Kasim Reed back about 10 years ago, as we were trying to figure out what to do with the area that's commonly referred to as the Gulch and now Centennial Yards. And at that time, we passed overwhelmingly in this body a sales tax exemption to allow infrastructure development there to be bonded and the bonds to be reimbursed or paid by future sales tax. There wasn't going to be any sales tax in that area if there wasn't development, so we weren't taking any money out of our state treasury. It was future sales taxes. That project got tied up in a lot of litigation and internal City of Atlanta politics and was delayed by 6 or 7 years. This is to sync the 30-year bonds with their issuance that will, I think, is either just happening or about to happen, so we can go ahead and get that area renovated, up to speed, and ready to be developed in time for the World Cup here in 2026. So I would ask for your support of this to get this project back on track. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I'll yield.
You have one
well.
question. I'm sorry, Senator. Recognize Senator from 26.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
I yield to my friend from the 26th.
So what you're talking about is what you had, a 67-year delay?
It came through our Regulated Industries Committee. It was tied up in court and local politics for 6 or 7 years.
So basically what you try to do is pick up those years back since they're ready to get started so the bonds would coincide with the years.
Exactly. We're just resetting the clock because they're 30-year bonds, and we've wasted 6 years when they hadn't been generating the income to pay them off.
Senator from the 19th, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
I yield.
Senator, is there a sub to this?
Say that again?
Is there a Senate committee substitute to this bill, or is it just the House bill?
No, it's House bill. We passed the bill out of regulated industries as it passed the House.
Well, Senator Further Yield.
I yield.
You said this was to add 4 to 6 years to the sales tax. I'm just trying to find that, and I might just be missing it. Can you show me where the
Yeah, it's on page
expiration
3.
is?
You'll see they say shall remain in existence for 30 years from
the first issuance?
It says the first issuance of the bonds in an amount in excess of $100,000, and that's what's about to happen. That's what it's referencing rather than give a specific date.
So the sales tax exemption would be 30 years from, like, do you know what year that was?
I think it was last month or last few months.
Will the yield for another question?
Be glad to.
You and I started to talk about this online. I just couldn't get my answer, so I'm going to give you an opportunity to help me out on this now. On line 28, it appears that previously the local governing body could collect enterprise zone infrastructure fees from every retailer that operated within the project. But that line gets struck, and now it's from every qualifying business. I'm wondering the difference.
I believe that is to make it consistent with the fact that even though the only project that has availed itself of this sales tax exemption is the Gulch Centennial Yards, it is available for anybody with a capital investment of $400 million or more. So that's to make it clear it's not just this defined area. It could apply to other areas. Of course, they would begin by issuing $400 million of bonds, and the beginning date would be when that happened. It would have to be a defined enterprise zone, but this was to keep it from being simply exclusive to downtown Atlanta, Georgia, if another part of the state wanted to do such an extensive development.
Thank you.
You have no more questions, Senator.
Thank you. Mr. President, I yield the will to urge your favorable consideration.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hearing none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. Previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor will vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 47, the nays are 8. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Recognize Senator from the 23rd.
Mr. President, I request that House Bill 322 be removed from the table.
Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 322 by Representative Hawkins, the 27th, and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 11, Title 43, the official code of Georgia annotated with to dentists, dental hygienists, and dental assistants so as to provide provisions regarding the Georgia Board of Dentistry issuance of a dental or dental hygiene license for the sole purpose of teaching or instructing in an accredited dental school, dental hygiene school, or academic medical center in this state, to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Is there objection? Without objection.
House Bill 322, by Representative Hawkins to the 27th, and others, bill to be town and act to amend Chapter 11, Title 43 of the OCGA and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Higher Education recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Burns, Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize Senator from the 23rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I bring you House Bill 322. This is a continuation of our efforts to enhance our dental education across Georgia. As you know, we have a dental school, the Dental College of Georgia at Augusta University, and now we're expanding that to an additional campus in Savannah. There's a severe shortage of instructors, qualified dental faculty. What this bill does is it allows us to hire faculty who have been licensed to practice dentistry in another state, country, or territory. They submit a letter of recommendation from the dean or the director of the School of Dentistry at the Dental School of Georgia, Dental College of Georgia. They've never failed a dental exam. They have had dental licensure, never had their license revoked, and they only practice dentistry as a part of their educational duties. This is a good bill to enhance the education of the dental program in Georgia, and I ask for your favorable consideration. Mr. President, there are no questions. I'll yield the will. Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor will vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52 and the nays are 0. This bill, having received a requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Recognize the senator from the 56th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, I'm going to ask for a moment of silence. If you remember on Friday, we were praying for young Navy, a 5-year-old girl who is a daughter of Sergeant Royce Zah, one of our troopers, and his wife, Brittany. She was unable to overcome her illness and passed away.
Please stand for a moment of silence at the senator's request.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the family. Senator from the 29th, you're on deck.
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent to move House Bill 358 from the table.
Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 358 by Representative Smith, the 138th, and others, bills being town and act to amend Code Section 2-1-7 of the OCGA related to prohibiting the acquisition of possessory interest in certain lands by certain foreign persons and entities, to provide for definitions, right related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Is there objection? Without objection, Secretary, finish the caption.
House Bill 358 by Representative Smith, the 138th, and others, bills being town and act to amend Code Section 2-1-7 of the CGA and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland, Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize Senator from the 29th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the senator from the 56th for coming up and talking about Navy and her family. I think it's very important. Colleagues, House Bill 358 is just a continuation of something that we passed out of here last year. All it does is narrow and clarify the definition of a military installation. The definition that we use here, we crafted using legislation out of Florida, working with some of our friends in the governor's office. I'll stand for any questions.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 35, the nays are 20. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Recognize Senator from the 23rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request that House Resolution 121 be removed from the table.
Here, read the caption.
House Resolution 121 by Representative Campbell, 135th and others, a resolution recognizing Mr. John W. Mixon and dedicating a building in his honor and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection? Not objection. Finish caption.
House Resolution 121 by Representative Campbell, 135th and others, a resolution recognizing Mr. John W. Mixon and dedicating a building in his honor and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State Institutions and Property recommends that this resolution do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Harbison, Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize Senator from the 23rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this House Resolution 121 recognizes the life and service of John W. Mixon. We acknowledge his leadership and deep personal commitment to the welfare of Georgia. Mr. Mixon was the commissioner of the Georgia Forestry Commission, and this resolution authorizes and directs the Georgia Forestry Commission to erect and maintain appropriate signage dedicating the John W. Mixon Georgia Forestry Building. We appreciate the support of the body in this resolution, and I stand for questions or I yield the well. Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for your favorable consideration.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. Previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. Report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Question is on the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor will vote yea. Opposed, nay. Nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the adoption of the resolution, the yeas are 54 and the nays are 0. This resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Recognize the Rules Chairman for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that HB 240 be lifted from the table.
Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 240 by Representative Williams of the 148th and others, the bill to be entitled Act to amend Part 2, Article 15 of Chapter 1 of Title 10 and Article 13 of Chapter 1 of Title 7 of the OCGA related to the Fair Business Practices Act and licensing of mortgage lenders and mortgage brokers respectively, so as to prohibit unfair or deceptive practices in consumer transactions related to mortgage trigger leads, to provide for definitions, to provide for remedies, to provide for related matters, to provide for effective dates, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Is there objection? Hearing none.
House Bill 240 by Representative Williams of the 148th and others, bill to be entitled Act to amend Part 2, Article 15 in Chapter 1 and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Banking and Financial Institutions recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Summers, Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 6th. Speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, colleagues, I bring you HB 240, also known as Trigger Leads Bill. So right now we've got mortgage lenders that are complaining that individuals are shopping for a mortgage, or individuals that shop for mortgages are getting harassed by lenders who have access to their information when an individual tries to qualify for a mortgage. So we're creating what is called a trigger lead. Now, the following practices or deceptive acts are what trigger leads will now be defined as. So the failure to state in the initial solicitation their non-affiliation status with the mortgage lender or mortgage broker with whom the consumer initially applied, or failing in the initial solicitation to conform to relevant laws regarding pre-screened solicitations using consumer reports, or the usage of a consumer's information that opted out of pre-screened credit offers or placed themselves on the federal do not call registry, or solicitations that offer certain rates, terms, and costs, knowing there will be subsequent changes to the detriment of the consumer. So, and these violations are subject to punishments under the Fair Business Practices Act. These unlawful acts are further added to the list of prohibited acts that licensed mortgage lenders and brokers must abstain from. So this is a good consumer protection bill for the citizens of Georgia. And with that, I will yield for questions.
Senator, I know you're trying to stall right now, but you're not going to be able to stall this one out, so you might as well yield the well.
No questions?
You do have a couple questions, but they're all stall questions.
Let's
But I'll
hear 'em.
recognize the senator from the 31st.
Will the senator yield?
I will yield for my good friend from the 31st. Used to be a great friend.
Is it not true that this bill is not necessarily treachery?
This is not a treacherous bill. It's for the citizens of Georgia.
Senator, is it not true that there's no conspiracy with this bill?
There is no conspiracy. It's a good bill. Came out clean. We're ready to send it to the governor.
We'll recognize the senator from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
I will yield to the Appropriations Chairman.
Will you yield for a series of questions?
Absolutely.
First question is, I noticed that were these mortgage bankers acting badly?
Not necessarily the bankers. It's a lot of your third parties doing some predatory type practices.
When they were acting, will the senator further yield?
Sure.
When they were acting badly, what was the penalty you put in place for them?
Restate your question.
Will the senator further yield?
I yield.
When the parties were acting badly, whether they be the mortgage bankers or the third parties, what was the penalty you put in place for them?
Well, there's always fear of debanking them.
Will the senator further yield?
Yes.
Did you not make them subject to the Fair Business Practices Act on line 10?
Well, yes, I already stated that earlier.
When you make them subject to the Fair Business Practices Act, what is the penalty?
I think you know the answer to that question.
I think you do too. I yield.
I know that was a rhetorical question.
Senator from the 30th.
Does the gentleman yield?
I will yield.
The senator from the 19th pretty much stole my question, but on lines 37 through 39, or lines 37 through 39, so they're punishable by provisions of this part, which I believe we go back to line 10.
That's correct.
It appears the senator from the 19th may know what those penalties are, but maybe the senator from the 30th does not. Could you enlighten me on those penalties?
Restate that last part, please.
I said, apparently the senator from the 19th knows what those punishments are under the Fair Business Practice Act, but possibly the senator from the 30 does not. So could you enlighten me to what those penalties are?
Yeah, if you'll check out Code Section 7-1-1000, I think a lot of your answers will be found in that code section.
Do you have that code section in front of you by any chance? Because I don't.
I have the code section, just not the words in it.
Okay. I appreciate your help on that.
Yes.
All right, Senator.
All right. I'll yield the well reluctantly. I urge your favorable consideration on House Bill 240.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the reported committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. Reported committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Senator from 26, would you like for us to continue on till about 10 p.m. or as the senior most member of this esteemed body, I mean?
Mr. President, really don't matter that much. But you know, I make a motion to adjourn. How many Senate bills they take up over in the House?
I don't think very many, and we're passing a lot of bad House bills right now. So I think I might be willing to take that motion of yours right there. What do you think, Majority Leader?
The senator from the 26th has inspired me, so therefore I move the Senate stand adjourned pursuant to SR 6 until 10 a.m. on Wednesday, April the 2nd.
All right, the senator has moved. Secretary, read the announcements.
Mr. President, the Appropriations Subcommittee on Compensation will meet at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning in room 450 in the Capitol, and the Rules Committee will meet tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. in room 450 in the Capitol. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Senator from the 53rd and then senator from 54th. Y'all just get in line.
Thank you, Mr. President. Interstate cooperation members, we have a private room waiting on us right now for all you can eat Brazilian steak, chicken, and all the fixings. So I know everybody wants to be a part of it. No, interstate cooperation. And there's a long list to get on the committee, but I just want to let everybody know we got a room waiting.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know tomorrow is a committee work day, but I want to remind everybody tomorrow morning, if you're here, please come and join us at 7 a.m. for Legislative Fellowship, 7 o'clock, and CAP 132. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from the 6th, you have an announcement.
Rules will be tomorrow at 12:30. 12:30 tomorrow. See you tomorrow.
Majority Leader has moved the Senate stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Wednesday, April the 2nd. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes clearly have it. We're adjourned. See you Wednesday. See you, the rest of you, at committee meetings tomorrow. So have a good evening.